In case there's any confusion, you're currently watching The Other Side, but we are suckers for people doing their own highlights reel. And Dave Stanley and Sky Racing, we've completely fallen into your trap. So 30 seconds of footage you're watching now is Dave Stanley speaking with numerous stars from around the racing world. Dave doing it from his home in Sydney to Bob Baffert in California to Joseph O'Brien in Ireland to Zach Purden in Hong Kong. And we can't guarantee this will be a weekly feature, but we thought Dave and Sky Racing, you deserve to kick off the show for us this week. All right, thanks for joining us for another episode of The Other Side. I'm Kaylee Wilson here in New Zealand, Jared Thompson joining us from the United States of America, and we're going to take you straight away to the United Kingdom. We're putting a spotlight on the FA and what they're doing over there. In England, big challenges with COVID-19, and the FA have responded by rolling out a number of their star players and using them to engage not only with each other, but with their essential workers and with their youth. So they have had Micah Richards, former Manchester City star and England player, speaking with the likes of Harry Winks and Tyrone Mings, getting some really beautiful conversations between their athletes. But then also having Tyrone in particular speak with a number of their hospital workers, such as Sarah and Kunal, and school teachers such as Matt. There's some really neat interviews there, and then also chatting with younger fans and making sure that they know what's important during this really difficult time. So beautiful work from the FA. Using their star players to do some great things within the community. So massive thumbs up from me to what you guys are making happen there. Really fortunate for me this week to catch up with Moana Maniapoto, one of the stars of New Zealand television at Current Affairs, with her show Te Ao with Moana on Monday night. And we'll drop to that interview a little bit later on. But Jared, there's some pretty interesting stuff happening in college sport in the States as well.
Yeah, obviously, college sports hasn't started back up, just like many other professional sports around the world. But one thing we've seen is a lot of creative content from one of our partners in Colorado. That's the Mountain West Network. And typically they would be a studio-based, more newsworthy type of daily churn of content. But they've really delved into some feature reporting with athletes and coaches, and have a series now called Mountain Moments that dives back into, maybe a play or a moment or a story that was told previously or shown previously, and now they're coming back with that key player in it and getting their thoughts on it, with some time that has passed. And it's been really illustrative and really interesting. A few additional subject matter things on top of that. I watched a video they had on their site recently of a football athlete, I think, who had to talk about the ways he's creatively training while he's in isolation and he doesn't have access to weights and the proper nutrition and things like that. So really, really good use of the platform that we give them. And also, I think, a really good showcase of how, when you allow your subject, your guest, your interviewee to take the interview in a room they're comfortable with, without lights and camera and studio and directors and people running around and microphones hanging off your chest. It's a lot more comfortable to be on your device, in front of your computer, on your couch, in your house, and just having that one-to-one conversation provides a lot more authentic and maybe more comfortable, relaxed, and detailed conversation. I'll give an honorable mention and a shout out to Ohio Dominican Athletics. They jumped on board a little over a week ago, but they're already churning out some content put up. I saw something this week, their first in a series of podcasts that is being hosted by Todd Bell, who's their radio personality, via their communications manager, Tyler Jester. Their first one with their AD just talked about the tech the entire athletics department is using to stay engaged, to stay in touch throughout their lockdown period, and what they're doing to get back on their feet as a season comes to, maybe a restart. Lastly, I'll just say we've had a lot of feedback and a lot of questions the past month or so about streaming and how to get started, live broadcast and those types of things through our product. Obviously, we're a browser-based service, and there's a lot of different streaming products out there, but we put a tutorial on our site. Go to our blogs page or go to our YouTube page and you'll find a streaming tutorial. It's only 9 minutes. It's really simple to get through, but the mechanics of it will across all platforms and realistically get you going from 0 to 60 in terms of US standards. I don't know what 60 miles per hour in kilometers per hour would be. Kaylee, you'll have to help me on that. But
96, I believe, Jared.
All right, so you'll go from 0 to 96 if you're not from the States in no time, and you'll be streaming like a pro. So that was my week. Kaylee, I'm really excited about the interview you've done with Moana, because she does a lot of great interviews. So I'm really curious to see what's going on in her head, because we don't get to hear so much from her necessarily. Tell us a little bit more about that, and then we'll show you a preview of what's coming up in a few days with that feature interview.
Yeah, so fascinating lady, Moana, trained as a lawyer, as a member of the New Zealand Music Hall of Fame, does music that blends all sorts of different genres, sounds, as well as Indigenous language and performance, and pretty special, creative lady, and unsurprising that she taps into some really different parts of society, some uncomfortable spots, to be honest. She spoke about drug addiction during lockdown and how that was went and spoke to. They went inside and spoke with someone at a halfway house through Blinder, and how just some places that you wouldn't normally see in the mainstream media. Moana is capable of going to with great empathy and understanding and curiosity, and so we'll give you a little bit of a look at that now, and then we'll have the feature interview with Moana up shortly.
And what we really want to see and hear are the important issues and stories that need to be told. And, you can see a lot of rubbish on television that's got flash drone shots and bloody cranes coming out your ears, and you just, start to yawn, because, who cares at the end of the day? And I think in the current affairs space that this has been really an eye-opener. And for small companies like Māori Television that are challenged when it comes to money, and we want to do stories that have that are important overseas for our audiences to hear. It opens up new opportunities for us to be able to tell those without travelling.
Yeah, and we spoke before we caught up recording, Moana, just around the. You talked about the restriction that you think some people, in a formality that comes across people in that studio situation sometimes, that you've got these bouncy, bubbly people that you're ready to rock and roll with, and then, lights, camera, action, and not much action. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, and I always preferred, I've interviewed politicians like before we went to lockdown, Paula Bennett and Shane Jones, and it's quite challenging to get anything interesting out of politicians just quietly, because they've got their little memo that they stick to. But if you're in their space, if you're in anybody else's space, it's a lot more collegial and relaxing. And I watch people that have come into the studio sometimes, and they're, we're having lots of fun and talking in the green room, and they sit down, and then it's all suddenly very formal. The lights are on, it's someone waving them down, and then suddenly it's like a little bit of the possum in the headlights thing. And I think it's nice to help people feel comfortable, so that they can talk freely. So that's what's been nice about Blinder.
Yeah,